And welcome back to Hannity. The president is viciously mocking Republicans for raising concerns about ISIS infiltrating thousands of Syrian refugees that are scheduled to come to America. Now, here is what the president said late last night. Take a look at this.
When individuals say that we should have a religious test and that only Christians, proven Christians, should be admitted, that's offensive and contrary to American values. I cannot think of a more potent recruitment tool for ISIL than some of the rhetoric that's been coming out of here. Now, first they were worried about the press being too tough on them during debates. Now they're worried about 3-year-old orphans. That doesn't sound very tough to me.
Well, the JV team that's contained now while the president brushes aside legitimate security threats that are posed by taking in these migrants. Earlier today, authorities in Turkey reportedly arrested 8 suspected ISIS operatives who were posing as refugees before they can get on a flight headed for Germany. Here with reaction, Speaker of the House, Congressman Paul Ryan. Congressman, welcome back. Good to see you, sir.
Hey, good to be with you, Sean. Thanks for having me.
This is a recruitment tool. This is a president called JV team. Man-caused disasters administration used that term. Overseas contingencies, they're contained. Have you ever met anybody that's been so wrong on such an important issue than this president? And what's your reaction to what he said?
I think he's playing politics. It's remarkably unpresidential, Sean. I don't for the life of me understand this. He just said he's going to veto our bill, putting a pause on the refugee program. I can't imagine why one would do that. Our bottom line is very, very clear, and it's the first responsibility of the federal government: secure the homeland, keep people safe in America. So here's what we're doing. We obviously know that ISIS wants to infiltrate the refugee population. That's very clear. So we need to put a pause on this program and have higher standards placed upon it so that we can verify on a person-by-person basis each and every single refugee whether or not they pose any security risk. And if they do, and if we can't without a shadow of a doubt prove that, then they shouldn't come here.
Well, but the
this
bill,
is very clear. We're passing this bill tomorrow.
A lot of conservatives, including some members of the Freedom Caucus, were getting in touch with me all day about it. And I know that the Secretary of Homeland Security, the Director of the FBI, Director of National Intelligence need to certify that these people would be safe individually. I understand that. Is there a chance, though, that ISIS, al-Qaeda operatives would be trained to lie and be trained to defeat any background or security check? Because I would believe that's part of a possibility. Or if the FBI director says, based on what we know now, does that mean it's signed off on?
No, that's the threshold they have right now. We're upping the threshold from what that is right now. And here's the problem. There really isn't a Syria to talk to corroborate the veracity of a person's claims. That is why we're saying we have to put this bill in place, which pauses the program effectively and make sure that we raise the standards so that we can get in and check on every one of these claims. And if we can't verify a person's claims, then they can't come. So the point here, Sean, is we've got to keep the country safe. I think the president is playing politics with this. I think that's very unfortunate. And the other point I'm trying to say is this should not be a partisan issue. Democrats agree with us here in Congress, and I think we're going to have a pretty big bipartisan vote tomorrow, because this should not be about Republicans and Democrats. This should be about keeping America safe and knowing that ISIS is trying to infiltrate the refugee population. We're going to do something about it tomorrow, and this is pretty fast. We assembled our task force on Saturday as a response to what happened in Paris on a Friday, because we think it's just that urgent of a situation.
You know, I just put up on the screen all of our intelligence officials, starting with General John Allen, who's Obama's top envoy to defeat ISIS, and James Comey, our FBI director, and the National Director of Intelligence, James Clapper, and John Kirby from the State Department. I put all these names up there. They all said ISIS will try and infiltrate the refugee community like we saw in Paris. So I guess the question is, the president is so insistent here, doesn't it look to you like he's willing to gamble with the lives of the American people? And what if he's wrong? And what if what if they do infiltrate and kill Americans? Who's going to step up and take responsibility then?
So that's why we're doing what we're doing tomorrow. Look, we've all gotten the briefing. We had the FBI, the Homeland Security come and brief us here in a classified briefing and an unclassified briefing. And we are not satisfied with how this refugee program is being run right now. We don't think the security standards are nearly as stringent enough. and we are not satisfied with this. That is why we're passing this bill tomorrow.
Are you including the Babin amendment, which would put a pause for 6 months on it, or not including that part?
This will put a pause, I believe, for longer than that. This effectively puts a pause in the program, and it will take longer than 6 months, I believe, to put these kinds of security controls in place.
Here's my question, though. If all of these intelligence people that we hire to do this are all saying that they'll try to infiltrate, that means they'll do anything, like they did to get into Paris. Why don't we just cancel it? Why do we just say you cannot come here? It's too big a risk to the American people. I don't think we could fully ascertain what's in people's hearts. I don't think anybody can assure us that ISIS wouldn't lie and create documents and a document trail. I mean, I think they would do anything to get here. Why don't we just end the program? And that might mean defunding the program. Wouldn't that be a better idea?
Couple of points. I don't think we have time to wait a month for funding bills. I think we need to do this now. That's point number one. Point number two, we're a compassionate country. The refugee laws are important laws, and we don't want terrorists to dictate how we run, whether we have a law or not. But we don't think, in this particular case, with respect to ISIS trying to infiltrate the Syrian and Iraqi, by the way, Iraqi refugee program, that the standards are anywhere near where they should be. And by the way, the FBI cannot right now certify these standards, so this does pause the program. And so we think we are effectively accomplishing the same goal. But the other point I'm trying to make, Sean, is we're trying to make this bipartisan because we don't think this should be a Republican or Democrat issue.
Nancy
This should be an
Pelosi
American
says her bill's
security
stronger
issue.
and tougher.
That's just not the case. But let me say one thing. Let's widen the focus here for a second, Sean. The reason we're having this conversation about refugees, the reason we're having this conversation about ISIS, is because we don't have a plan to defeat ISIS. Is because the president and his foreign policy, particularly with respect to Iraq and Syria, is so abysmal, so lacking. It didn't contain ISIS, and we don't have a strategy to defeat ISIS. So let's not forget the big picture here, which is we have terrorism worldwide knocking on our door, and we do not have a plan to defeat this terrorist threat. We passed a bill, sent it to the president today, requiring, and we have veto override votes on this bill, requiring that the president come back to Congress with a plan and a strategy to actually defeat ISIS.
But the president says he'll veto this bill, and as it relates to the Syrian refugees. If it comes to that, you said you would like to do it sooner rather than later, but in early December, I think it's December 11th, funding for the government, current government funding, legislation runs out. One of the issues conservatives have had is that Republicans have not used their constitutional enumerated powers of the purse on immigration and Obamacare, for example. Would you at that point be willing to use the power of the purse and defund this to keep the American people safe?
Look, right now, Sean, I'm not going to take any options off the table. I'm not going to put any options on the table. I think we have a good case to make right now. We have important legislation to pass. I'm asking and encouraging Democrats to join us. I know the president's threatening vetoes because I think he's worried, frankly, that Democrats are going to vote with the American people, that he's going to vote with us to add more security layers.
Two polls that are out that show 2-1 the American people are against Obama bringing in Syrian refugees altogether. I would prefer, I don't know if we can really fully vet anybody like this, nor do we have the resources. I personally am of the belief that we shouldn't be taking them in. I think it's too big a risk.
Let me just say this, Sean, and if we cannot, without a shadow of a doubt, make sure and confirm that a person does not pose a threat to this country, then they shouldn't come here. And that's the point we're trying to make. And so I don't want this to be Republicans versus Democrats. This is Americans. This is our national security. It shouldn't be politicized like the president is politicizing it. And that is why we are asking all of our colleagues to support fixing this, pausing this, and getting this right. But we're not going to take. But let me say one more thing, Sean. The task force we created here just this Saturday, this is just step one. We have a lot more work to do. We're going to do hearings. We're going to do legislation. We have many more things that we will be doing here in the House to address these issues.
We have resettled 1.5 million Muslim migrants in the United States. Senator Sessions had put out a piece where all these people that we took into this country then come here and then get involved in terror activity. I put it up on my website. I'd urge you to take a look at it. And we take in 100,000 Muslim immigrants to the United States every year. Do we have to think about somebody who grows up under Sharia, believes that women can't drive, can't be seen in public without a male relative, 4 male eyewitnesses for rape? Do we have a clash of cultures we've got to consider? How do we know if they want to assimilate? How do we know if they want to bring terror into the United States? How do we ascertain that?
Well, first of all, I don't think a religious test is appropriate. That's not who we are. We believe in the First Amendment and religious freedom. And I don't think it's the appropriate test because anybody can come under the guise of something else. It's not hard for a person to claim that they're something that they're not, like a Christian or something like that, to get into the country. That is why we're calling for a security test. I think what the test that matters is a security test, because anybody can try and infiltrate this country by posing as something that they are not. So I don't think that's the proper test. I think a security test is the proper test.